This vegan chicken is so good, it makes a ton, and you can use it in hundreds of dishes. Tacos, soup, salads, anywhere where you use chicken, you can use this vegan chicken. And it's really cheap too, clocking in at this much per serving. The secret though is how you marinate it and finish it in the pan, which we'll cover in a bit, so stick around for that. To make, weigh out 350 grams of tofu, and then open a can of cannellini beans and dump both, including the bean water, into the food processor and puree it for 1 to 2 minutes. If you got a little hunk of food that just doesn't want to get blended or a bit stuck, just scrape down the sides as needed and make sure it's liquefied. Then add 3 tablespoons of oil and 1 teaspoon of baking powder, salt, MSG, vinegar, and poultry seasoning. Run it again to incorporate the seasonings and then mix 370 grams of Veggie gluten and pop it back in the food processor for a 3-minute blend. I did this in 2 batches as my food processor wasn't big enough. If you have the recipe, you can likely just do this all in your food processor at the same time without also dirtying another bowl. This process is creating more complexity in the strands of gluten, which will lead to a better texture in the end product. You can see the gluten strands here just coming out of the dough. Let the dough rest for 1 hour, but you can store it in the fridge covered. Let it rest for 24 hours if you'd like to. The resting will loosen up the gluten so that you can roll it out however you like. Now, while that rests, let's make a stock that you'll use to cook the dough into seitan. I use this bouillon paste and I also put in some mushroom seasoning. You can use whatever you like, but the more flavor you put in, the more flavor you're gonna get out of it. Now get that to simmer while you roll out your rested dough. I rolled mine into a round sided long rectangle. That isn't a shape, but I think you get what I mean. You'll be done when the whole thing is 1/2 inch thick. I wanted to make little cutlets out of this, so I cut little rounded, roughly 3-ounce portions of the dough, as I find 3 ounces of seitan is a good serving size for a meal. But this is where you can go wild though and cut them however you like. If you wanna make nuggets, nugget it up. You want a giant slab? Well, cook a giant slab. A patty for a burger, the world is yours, you artiste. Once cut, you'll notice some of them have rough edges and you can just fold those in. And in general, you can shape how you like, as I just mentioned. Since I'm making these pretty for the camera, I'm molding them into a cutlet so I can better cut it into strips. Is that where the word cutlet comes from? Roll them out one more time to ensure that they're 1/2 inch thick-ish. And then at that point, your stock should be ready to go. So add your dough, keep it at a gentle simmer for 45 minutes. And I keep a timer just to check every 5 minutes or so, as you don't want it to boil. You want a nice, lazy simmer. So after this step, they're cooked. Now we just need to finish them. But before we get into that, you can store these like almost indefinitely. I store mine in my freezer and I take them out to defrost and then cook them. From what I can tell, these store in the freezer indefinitely and they'll store in your fridge for at least a week. Now for the most important part, you have to season these and marinate them before you cook them. Now this is gonna sound crazy, but the thing I learned that works the best is mayo. I learned this from EthanChlebowski. We're just gonna use vegan mayo, which is just essentially oil. And it's gonna adhere the seasonings to the chicken better than the oil itself would. So scoop some into a bowl, season that with salt and pepper, add an aromatic like oregano, and you're in business. Season this however you need for the dish you're making. Now here's the beauty of this. At this point, you don't have to follow my recipe if you don't want to. You can just Google search chicken marinade for X dish. Like if you're making a stir fry, chicken marinade for stir fry. These chicken marinades are basically always gonna be vegan because chicken is seasoned with plants to make it taste better. So once you've covered them in your vegan seasoned mayo, get a grill pan piping hot, add more oil to the pan if you like, and grill these up. You're only charring the outside. Remember, this is already edible. There's nothing raw to cook. So you want this on a pan as little time as possible because you don't want to draw out any extra moisture. You're just going for a nice char on both sides. Then use your sense of smell and your eyesight to determine when it's ready to flip. It should look like this when it's done. Just remember that the char is the secret. And once it's charred up, enjoy on any of your favorite dishes. So if you liked this recipe, you'd probably also like my shredded chicken recipe. It's one of my all-time favorite recipes. The link is on your screen now. And until next time, y'all, be nice to each other and keep cooking.